A massive 18-wheel semi-truck is idling on the shoulder of a highway, loaded entirely with fresh produce. Inside that trailer, tons of food are actively rotting. But the truck hasn't broken down, and the road isn't blocked. The delay is entirely digital. A central database failed to recognize the shipment data. Because the automated platform couldn't verify the load, the physical truck isn't allowed to move, effectively rendering thousands of pounds of food unusable. We operate inside a highly optimized $100 trillion global supply chain. Yet this vast, complex network can be paralyzed in an instant by a single invisible line of code failing to execute. Modern geopolitical power is moving into these invisible digital choke points, turning code into a more effective barrier than any physical blockade. In modern commerce, absolute control comes from owning the pathways a system relies on, rather than operating the system itself. It is a strategy of gatekeeping. To see exactly how this works, we can look at a highly visible physical business, Chuck E. Cheese. This chart shows the company's financial structure after it was acquired by the private equity firm Apollo Global Management. You can see their roughly $50 million in annual operating income, completely overshadowed by a staggering $1 billion in new debt. Over time, the interest payments alone consume the operating income entirely, pushing the company's actual net revenue below zero. The objective here was never to sell more pizza or arcade tokens. The strategy is to acquire the financial gate, extract the available wealth to pay off the investors, and allow the host institution to suffocate under the debt. When physical infrastructure is treated strictly as a disposable extraction point for private equity, the physical landscape decays. If a physical chain of restaurants can be methodically dismantled for capital, what happens when this identical financial model is applied to digital culture? We are entering a phase of rapid digital decay. Specifically, April 28, 2026 marks a scheduled industry-wide purge across the video game sector. On this single day, publishers are permanently shutting down the servers for dozens of legacy titles. Games like Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt and the PlayStation 3 version of Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare will simply cease to exist. These coordinated shutdowns are deliberate financial maneuvers. By turning off the infrastructure for older games, publishers force their player base to migrate to next-generation hardware, like the Nintendo Switch 2, and buy into an entirely new ecosystem. In an instant, millions of dollars of consumer investment and years of cultural history are erased. The plug is pulled, and the product vanishes. In a live service economy, consumers never truly own their media. They merely rent access to a corporate-controlled server, waiting for the day the gatekeeper decides to turn it off. This strategy of enclosure extends far beyond consumer media. It is actively being applied to the most critical global and public institutions we rely on. Take the World Trade Organization. Once the primary infrastructure for global commerce, it is increasingly being starved of funding and bypassed in favor of isolated, bilateral trade agreements. We see the exact same pattern domestically. The systematic firing of the National Science Board and the marginalization of advisory committees at the EPA and FDA represents a rapid dismantling of the United States scientific oversight infrastructure. Dismantling these scientific advisory bodies removes the public oversight required to keep critical research in the public domain. This shift clears the path for private interest groups to set their own standards without independent review. A strategic vacuum opens as these multilateral systems starve. In their place, private entities enclose the once public domain, turning universal standards into proprietary assets. The rotting food on the highway, the deleted video games, and the dismantled science boards all follow a single macroeconomic logic. This is the commercialization of the global commons. This process has been quietly building for decades. We recently passed the 25th anniversary of Dennis Tito becoming the first fee-paying space tourist, a very early indicator that the boundaries of space, the deep sea, and the digital landscape were open for private enclosure. Today, public systems are being replaced by massive proprietary physical infrastructure. You can see this in the $50 billion Project Pantheon data centers currently expanding across Croatia, or in the hard physical resource lines required to fuel these massive servers, like the newly established Trump peace pipelines. The definition of geopolitical power is shifting toward control over the servers, the debt, and the choke points, making digital infrastructure the primary asset of the new era. The entire globe is now dependent on a web of private digital gateways. Gateways that can be shut down completely and instantly at any moment, simply to satisfy a corporate balance sheet. What happens when the corporation managing the food supply, the power grid, or planetary orbit decides that supporting these systems no longer serves the interest of their shareholders?